Hi everyone, I'm Miko T. Cordero, together with my groupmates, Hazel Moreno, Fatima Simeon, and Jacob Dumaon. And we're going to report about the host defense mechanism. So without further ado, let's get started. So what is a host defense mechanism? Ito ay isang immune response na kung saan ito ay isang paraan ng pagtatanggol ng ating katawan sa kanyang sarili laban sa mga substance na nakikita nito bilang isang nakakapinsala o mga foreign substance. Sa immune response, kinikilala ng immune system ang mga antigens. Karaniwan nito ay ang mga protina. Sa pangunguna ng mga substance o ng mga microorganisms tulad ng mga bacteria o mga virus, at ito ay inaatake at sinusubukang sirain ang mga ito. As well for the immunity. Immunity can be defined as a complex biological system that endowed with the capacity to recognize whatever belongs to the self and to recognize what and reject for what is foreign or non-self. And one good example for the immunity, if kapag ang isang tao ay nagkaroon na ng chickenpox or has been immunized to chickenpox, ito ay immune na from getting chickenpox again. And one good example for this is for the vaccination. Vaccination gives us immunity against the disease for up to 6 months. And host defense mechanism, it is also the way in which the body protects itself from pathogens. So what is a pathogens? Pathogens is usually defined as a microorganisms that cause or can cause disease. We have defined a pathogen as a microbe that can cause damage in a host. Lastly, it is the ability to resist damage from microorganisms and foreign substances. If you don't know what is a microorganisms, they are organisms that can be found only through or can be seen only through a microscope. Microorganisms includes bacteria, protozoa, algae, and fungi. Although viruses are considered as a living organisms, they are sometimes classified as a microorganisms. At ano naman ang foreign substances? Foreign substances, foreign describes something that comes from the outside or from the word itself, foreign. A foreign substance in a body's tissue such as a bacterium or a virus in the body, virus may be recognized by the immune system and not belonging to the body. This causes an immune response. So one knowledgeable fact in the relation of immunity into environment is when genes tell a cell what to do, those instructions will get passed on down in DNA, such as for the parents to their offspring. But things such as bacteria and viruses also influence that offspring's development. This new study found that those environmental factors can influence immunity more than our genes do. And as a people age, the environment's impact and on immunity grows stronger, the scientists now report. And humans have 3 types of immunity. We have the innate, the active, and the passive immunity. So what is a innate immunity? Sinasabi ko sa inyo to, and I know madidiscuss ulit siya sa third defense mechanism or the third line of mechanism. Innate immunity, everyone is born with the innate or a normal immunity, a type of a general protection. For example, the skin acts as a barrier to blood germs from entering the body, and the immune system recognizes when certain invaders are foreign and could be dangerous. And we have the active immunity or the adaptive or the active immunity. It develops throughout our lives. And we develop active immunity when we're against to disease or when we're immunized against them with vaccines. And lastly, we have the passive immunity, also known as the borrowed from another source, and it lasts for a short times. Naglalast lang siya for a short time only or for a short span of time. For example, an antibodies in a mother's breast milk gives a baby temporary immunity to disease the mother has been exposed to. And we have two types of host defense mechanism. We have the non-specific host defense mechanism and the specific host defense mechanism. Under the non-specific host defense mechanism, we have the first line of defense and the second line of defense. And under the specific host defense mechanism, we have the third line of defense. For the first line of defense for skin, it offers to physical and mechanical barriers to pathogens. It is also for the covering, and it is also for the wounds, for the incision and abrasion, for the burns, injections, and in a collision or bite. And mechanical barriers on the first line of defense against pathogens, and they physically block pathogens from getting the body. The skin is the most important mechanical barriers. In fact, it is the single most important defense the body has. And skin it is a barrier that serves as a body's first line of defense against the harmful microbes that we have. Specialized immune cells within the skin tissue help to fight including organisms or the invading organisms. And the skin hosts diverse communities of beneficial bacteria and collectively known as the skin microbiota. The first line of defense includes physical and chemical barriers that are always ready and prepared to defend the body from the infection. There include your skin, the tissue, the ears, mucus, cilia, stomach aid, urine flow, friendly bacteria, and white blood cells called neutrophils. Thank you.
The second line of defense is non-specific resistance that destroys invaders in a generalized way without targeting specific individuals. Specifically, it destroys pathogens that are able to penetrate through the first line of defense. The second line of defense of the innate system includes chemical signals that produce inflammations and fever responses as well as mobilizing protective cells and other chemical defenses. The adaptive immune system mounts a highly specific response to substances and organisms that do not belong in the body. Other responses that it creates includes transferrin, iron balance, fever, interferons, complement system, acute phase proteins, cytokines, inflammations, and phagocytosis. In transferrin is also associated with the innate immune system. It is found in the mucosa and bind iron, thus creating an environment law in free iron that impedes bacterial survival in a process called iron withholding. The level of transferrin decreases in inflammation. This works through glycoprotein synthesizing in the liver, in restoring and delivering iron to tissues, and sequesters iron needed by pathogens. An infection occurs when pathogens make it past the first line of defense and enter the body. When this happens, the immune system responds in some general ways that treat all pathogens equally. For example, it can trigger to increase the core body temperature to produce a fever. The normal core body temperature is 36.2 degrees Celsius to 37.5 degrees Celsius. Hence, exceeding this scale will eventually result to fever. Kaya po nagkakaroon tayo ng lagnat kasi tumataas yung body temperature natin. Pyrogens are substances that can produce a fever. The common pyrogens are endotoxins, which are lipopolysaccharides or LPS, produced by gram-negative bacteria such as E. coli. The Limulus amoebocytes lysate or LAL test is used to detect endotoxins. Next one is interferons. Interferons are a diverse group of immune signaling molecules and are specifically important in our defense against viruses. Type 1 interferons, interferon A and interferon B, are produced and released by cells. The function of this is to prevent spread of any viral infections as well as to stimulate NK cells to kill virus-infected cells. Next one is the complement system. Complement system helps or complements the ability of antibody and phagocytic cells to clear pathogens from an organisms. It is part of the innate immune system. The complement system consists of a number of small proteins found in the blood, made by the liver. Normally, they circulate as inactive precursors, mainly this system, set of proteins that augment and complement host defenses. Activated by the presence of MO and FS, assist in the destruction of many pathogens. Next slide is acute phase proteins. Acute phase proteins are part of the innate immune response and its biological function, although variable, generally relate to defense to pathological damage and restoration of homeostasis. However, a specific APP or acute phase protein may have both pro and anti-inflammatory effects. Collective terms for plasma levels of molecules focuses on proteins whose plasma levels increases during infections and other related scenarios. It serves as markers during inflammations. Markers is also known as the albumin. Cytokines. Cytokines are small proteins that are crucial in controlling the growth and activity of other immune system cells and blood cells. When released, they signal the immune system to do its job. Cytokines affect the growth of all the blood cells and other cells that help the body's immune inflammation, also called as chemoreactants. It is emphasized functions are to attract immune cells to injured sites, acts of chemical messengers, in range within the immune system can be in the other systems of the body. The inflammatory response begins when a pathogen stimulates an increase in blood flow to the infected area. Blood vessels in that area expand, and the white cells that leak from the vessels to invade the infected tissues. These white blood cells, called phagocytes, engulf and destroy bacteria. Its purposes are to localize infections, to prevent the spread of pathogens, to neutralize toxins, and to aid in repairing and aiding tissues.
Second line of defense, inflammation. Inflammation, if bacteria enter the skin through the scrape, the area become red, warm, and painful. Inflammation is one way the body reacts to infection of injury. Example of inflammation is pag-iinit, pananakit, pamamaga, o karaniwang sanhi ng pagka-infeksyon at pinsala ng katawan. Tissue injury. Tissue injury is the most common soft tissue injury. Are muscles, tendons, and ligaments. Injuries occur during activity, exercise, and playing sports. Injury examples: sprain, strains, contusions, tendinitis, and bursitis are common soft tissue injury. And example din po siya ng pag naglaro ka po ng basketball is pwede kang matapilok, magka-strain, or madislogi yung buto mo at ninipis yung ligaments mo. Vasodilation is the blood flow to site of area of the body that are lagi oxygen of nutrients. Ito po yung example po ng vasodilation is yung pag-exercise kasi kailangan po ng nutrients and oxygen. Vascular permeability. Plasma E protein flow to affected area. Immigration, exit of WBC or white blood cells, macrophages, and PMNS. From copulines to site of injuries. Chemotaxis, the movement of leukocytes toward sites of inflammation. Phagocytosis, a process that begins when solid make contact with the outer cell surface, triggering the movement of the membrane. Types of WBC or white blood cells. Granulocytes, a part of immune system that has granules with enzyme. Part are released during infection, allergies reaction, and asthma. Neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils are types of granulocytes. Monocytes and macrophages, types of cell found in the types of cell immune system of organism. They are considered at the front at host depends. Lymphocytes, types of white blood cells in the type immune system that most vertebrates. B cells, involved in humoral immunity. T cells more abundant, involved in cell mediated immunity. Types of T cells. Helper cells release cytokines. Helper or cytotic cells destroy usually infected foreign tumor cells. Regulatory cells serve as brake on the immune response. NK cells kills target cells, insect a molecule called perform creative and opening through which cytotoxic granules called granzymes are infected. Macrotypes, vandalism microbes that lives me blood and migrates to infected tissue. Fixed macrophage is strategically unbeatable in specific areas that are more vulnerable to intruder. Dendritic cells, antigen presenting cells are present in tissues but are in contact external environment. They process ingested antigens and display antigens determinants of their surfaces.
System, a complex network of cells, tissues, organs, and the substances that they make that helps the body fight infections and other diseases. Humoral or antibody-mediated immunity involved in the production of antibodies in response to an antigen. Cell-mediated immunity involved in activating. Macrophage, a type of white blood cells that surrounds and kills microorganisms, removes dead cells, and stimulates the action of other immune system cells. T helper cells, since they are necessary for practically all adaptive immune responses. Helper T cells are perhaps the most significant cells in adaptive immunity. They aid in the activation of cytotoxic T cells, which kill infected target cells, as well as B cells that generate antibodies and macrophage that kills ingested microorganisms. Cytotoxic T cells is a type of immune cell that can kill certain cells, including foreign cells, cancer cells, and cells infected with a virus. NK cells, or natural killer cells, commonly referred to as NK cells or large granular lymphocytes, are a subset of innate lymphoid cells, a rapidly increasing family of cytotoxic lymphocytes that are essential to the innate immune system. They make up 5 to 20% of circulating lymphocytes in humans. Immune system function cytotoxic lymphocyte. Granulocytes is an immune cell kind that contains enzyme-filled granules, tiny particles that are produced during infections, allergic response, and asthma attacks. Granulocytes include neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils. One kind of white blood cells is the granulocytes. Effective against intracellular antigens, cell-mediated immunity primarily targets pathogens that resides in phagocytes and infect non-phagocytic cells. It works best to eliminate intracellular bacteria, cancerous cells, and virus-infected cells. Immunity, acquired immunity, reaction as a result of exposure to antigens, actively producing antibodies or receiving antibodies. Types: active natural immunity, active artificial immunity, passive natural immunity, passive artificial immunity. Active immunity, individual develops own antibodies due to exposure to an antigen, or natural or deliberate, offers long-lasting immunity. Passive immunity, patient receive antibodies produced by mother or another or individual animals, offers temporary immunity, borrowed immunity. Natural immunity, non-deliberate contact with either antibody or antigen. Artificial immunity, deliberate introduction of either antibody or antigen. Active natural immunity, plus natural exposure or entry of an antigen, usually coming from infectious diseases. Active artificial immunity, antigens are deliberately introduced to stimulate own immune response or antibody production, achieved through vaccinations or vaccines. Materials that are artificially induce or stimulate immunity to an infectious disease. Methods of introducing vaccine. Ingestion. Ingestion is the act of eating food and letting it enter the body. After biting into a sandwich and chewing it, that process of sandwich entering the oral cavity in ingestion. Injection. An injection is a way of administering a liquid to a person using a needle and syringe. It is also sometimes called a shot or jab. Injections are used to give a wide variety of different medications such as insulin, vaccine, and Botox. but not all injections are the same. Qualification of an ideal vaccine. Contains enough antigens to protect against infection. Contains all strains of the pathogen. Has few or no side effects. Does not cause a disease. Like attenuated vaccine. Weakened pathogens. Inactivate vaccine killed pathogens.